on the cold metallic surface of Research Station Yorick Prime, nestled on the desolate moon orbiting the gas giant Rathos, an experiment of colossal ambition was underway. The Galvani Collective, an alliance of some of the galaxy's most brilliant and arguably most arrogant scientists, gathered in a semicircle around an enormous containment chamber. The creature within had begun to stir. Dr. V. Lish, a thin, teal-skinned being with 4 eyes perpetually twitching behind his safety visor, turned to address his colleagues. Behold our magnum opus, the apex sun, the culmination of 100 generations of selective breeding, gene augmentation, and psychic conditioning. He gestured with pride to the beast. A low rumble echoed through the room. The apex sun moved, revealing a body armored in overlapping scales harder than starship hull plating, eyes that glowed like smoldering embers, and rows of serrated teeth capable of reducing titanium to filings. It was a blend of power and predatory instinct, an apex predator with no equal, designed to hunt, adapt, and destroy anything in its path. "Remind me again why we did this," grumbled Kelvaris, a bulky 3-legged scientist from the Dranekian species, as he nervously fingered his datapad. "It looks like it wants to eat us all for breakfast." V. Lish waved dismissively. "We did this, Kelvaris, to prove our superiority in bioengineering, to defend ourselves against any potential threat, to create the ultimate deterrent." Kelvaris made a sound like a mechanical squeak. "Sure, but what's the plan if it gets loose?" Before V. Lish could answer, the chamber's double-layered barrier hissed as it activated containment field protocols. The apex sun's fiery gaze locked onto the observers, and its muscles tensed. There was no doubt it wanted to escape. And it had noticed something new, a curious figure entering the control chamber from a side door. Connor Reid, the human technician assigned to assist with electrical systems on Yorick Prime, was a late addition to the research team. He wasn't a scientist. He wasn't even supposed to be in the control chamber, but a power fluctuation required his expertise. As he strolled in, hands stuffed into the pockets of his slightly singed coveralls, the gelid stare of the apex sun transfixed him. "Well, that's a big lizard," he remarked casually, unaware that the assembled scientists were frantically waving for him to move away from the containment chamber. Kelvaris practically vibrated with fear. "He's in range. It's going to attack." V. Lish paled difficult, given his teal complexion. "Initiate lockdown procedures immediately." Within seconds, alarms blared, and automated defensive turrets sprang to life, training their sights on the apex sun. The beast lunged. It slammed against the containment barrier with bone-rattling force, but the barrier held. Barely. Connor, still unfazed, tilted his head. "Hey, is it supposed to do that?" Looks upset. Dr. V. Lish seized him by the arm and dragged him back. "You fool. That is the galaxy's most dangerous predator. What were you thinking?" Connor blinked, then scratched his head. "You, made it so it can smell fear or something. Always heard that was a thing." "No, it's." V. Lish paused, reviewing the apex sun's capabilities. "Actually, yes, highly attuned to fear pheromones." Connor's easygoing demeanor remained unchanged. "Huh. Maybe that's why it's looking at you all funny. Anyway, can I get to that power conduit, or should I worry about Godzilla here?" The gathered scientists exchanged looks. Connor Reid's obliviousness and apparent fearlessness had left the apex sun momentarily perplexed. Of course, perfection rarely goes as planned. Hours later, during a test of the apex sun's agility protocols, the creature displayed a previously unseen talent. The researchers had designed it to learn from its prey, but they hadn't accounted for the speed of its adaptation. In a split second of malfunctioning containment field flicker, barely a microsecond, the beast slipped free. Pandemonium erupted. The apex sun tore through reinforced barriers, shrugged off energy blasts from automated defenses, and brought down the station's primary bulkhead with a single swipe of its clawed limb. Scientists scrambled, their shouts mingling with klaxons as they fled toward escape pods. Connor found himself alone in a service tunnel. It wasn't exactly his plan. He had just been taking the long way around after fixing the power conduits. As the roar of the apex sun echoed, he muttered to himself, "Always knew I'd die on a Monday. Typical." Suddenly, the tunnel shook. Dust and debris rained down, and Connor turned to see the apex sun's eyes gleaming in the dim light. It exhaled, hot and predatory. It would be the end, except. The creature paused. Something was different. It approached slowly, lowering its massive head until its nostrils were inches from Connor. He watched it, maintaining a strangely calm stare as he thought of ways to escape there weren't any good ones. When the apex sun didn't strike, Connor, on impulse, pulled out a protein bar from his pocket and tossed it. "Hungry," he said, half joking. The creature caught the bar mid-air and crunched it. It sniffed at him again. To the astonishment of the surviving researchers who watched through remote cameras, the apex sun didn't devour Connor. Instead, it followed him, albeit warily. Connor's lack of overt fear had disrupted the beast's predatory conditioning. Over the next few days, an unprecedented, ridiculous bond formed. Connor, bewildered by his predicament, made the best of it. He named the apex sun Toothy, much to the scientist's horror, and treated it less like a death machine and more like a dangerous but misunderstood pet. Connor adapted to its needs, recognizing signals in its body language, distracting it with simple puzzles, and offering food it seemed to like. He tested boundaries carefully, always ready to bolt but noticing Toothy's surprisingly intelligent behavior. The apex sun, in turn, became less hostile, curious about the human who showed no signs of cowering before it. The Galvani scientists, observing from secure locations, were torn between terror and fascination. Kilvaris documented everything, occasionally muttering, "This defies every rule of biology," while V. Lish grudgingly admitted, "Perhaps humans are less fragile than we assumed." But danger loomed. Word of the escaped apex sun spread quickly throughout the galaxy, drawing the attention of militaries and mercenaries eager to claim or destroy it. Ships descended on Yorick Prime, blockading the station and threatening annihilation if the beast wasn't dealt with. The scientists, realizing their creation had become a galactic liability, reluctantly turned to Connor. "You've managed to control it, for reasons we don't fully understand," V. Lish admitted. "You must help us capture it again or neutralize it. Otherwise, we're all doomed." Connor's jaw tightened. He had grown attached to Toothy, not enough to risk his life, but enough to believe the apex sun was more than a mindless monster. "It doesn't need to be captured. Or killed," he said, surprising even himself with his conviction. "Maybe you lot should have thought about the consequences before playing God," V. Lish hissed. "This is not the time for morality." "Or maybe it is," Connor replied. "Look, I'll try to help, but on my terms, no killing." The plan was reckless. Connor would guide Toothy into a secure zone, using himself as bait. The scientists would then contain it with advanced energy fields. Everything had to go right. Connor's footsteps echoed as he sprinted through the dimly lit passageway, Toothy lumbering behind him with thunderous strides. The sounds of laser fire, explosions, and shouts closed in from all directions. Mercenary factions, desperate to claim the apex sun, breached the station's defenses and engaged each other with little regard for collateral damage. For Connor, survival now meant navigating the chaos with a creature that most would consider his doom. Turning a corner, Connor slid to a stop, almost crashing into a group of armored mercenaries brandishing energy rifles. There one of them shouted, raising his weapon. Toothy roared a sound so powerful it rippled through the walls and rattled every bone in their bodies. Without hesitation, the apex sun charged. Connor ducked behind a fallen bulkhead, peeking over just in time to see Toothy swipe through the air, scattering the mercenaries like ragdolls. Armor crumpled like tin, weapons clattered to the ground, and screams faded into silence. For a terrifying moment, Connor was reminded of just how deadly Toothy truly was. "Okay, buddy, that's one way to deal with it," Connor muttered, his heart pounding. Toothy sniffed the air, turning its fiery eyes back to him. It stomped closer, exhaling a blast of hot breath that ruffled Connor's hair. Was there still trust, or had something primal snapped? "Easy there," Toothy, Connor said, raising his hands slowly. "You're good. We're good. Let's not eat the guy with snacks, remember?" The beast tilted its head, seemingly confused. Then, with surprising gentleness, it nudged Connor with its massive snout. Connor laughed, relief flooding his system. "Yeah, you're a softie, under all those teeth." Meanwhile, the Gelvani scientists observed the unfolding events through surveillance feeds. Kelvaris couldn't believe his optics. The creature protects him. It's treating him as part of its pack. Vilish paced back and forth, his fingers twitching. This is unprecedented. A predator without equal and a human bonding with it. We may have overlooked a critical aspect of the human psyche. Or he's just lucky Kelvaris interrupted. Perhaps Vilish conceded, his eyes narrowing. But luck alone won't save us. We must act. If the apex sun escapes off-world, the consequences are incalculable. As the scientists debated, Connor stumbled upon one of the station's forgotten supply depots. With Toothy watching, he scavenged for supplies, emergency rations, tools, and an old communication relay that might just work if he tinkered with it. "Hope you like synth meat," he joked, tossing Toothy another snack. It was hardly the diet of a galactic apex predator, but Toothy seemed to enjoy it. Connor worked tirelessly, modifying the relay and sending out a distress call. He had no love for the Gelvani scientists. They'd created this mess, but he hoped to negotiate a truce. The only way out was together. When the call connected, Vilish's face appeared, tense and wary. "You survived?" Vilish asked, as if it defied all logic. "Barely. Look, this is bigger than your pride or my knack for not dying. We have mercenaries, bounty hunters, and probably a few crazies coming down on us. We need to get Toothy off the station safely." Vilish's eyes narrowed. "And your solution?" "Trust me to lead it out of here. Give me access to the emergency transport bay, and I'll guide Toothy. But no tricks. I won't let you kill it." Vilish hesitated, then nodded reluctantly. "Agreed." The journey to the transport bay was fraught with peril. The mercenaries, sensing their quarry slipping away, regrouped and launched a final offensive. Connor and Toothy found themselves caught in a firefight so intense that entire sections of the station buckled under the strain. Connor's improvised tactics using explosives to create barriers, rerouting coolant pipes to form icy obstacles kept their pursuers at bay. All the while, Toothy's strength and raw power held the line, tearing through attackers with unerring precision. Finally, they reached the transport bay, a cavernous room filled with small vessels. The scientists had prepared a containment ship, its interior reinforced with fields strong enough to hold the apex sun, assuming it cooperated. Connor approached the ramp, Toothy following but clearly wary of the confined space. Connor knelt, meeting Toothy's eyes. "I get it. You don't want to go back to being their experiment, but it's not forever. Just a temporary fix. Trust me, all right?" Toothy growled softly, a sound more like uncertainty than aggression. But when the mercenaries burst through the upper doors, it made its choice. Leaping into the containment ship, it positioned itself between Connor and the attackers, buying precious seconds for him to board. The ship's engines roared to life, piloted remotely by the scientists. As it lifted off, the mercenaries' last-ditch salvos of energy bolts scattered harmlessly against the reinforced hull. Back in orbit, tensions ran high. The Gelvani scientists wanted to recondition the apex sun, stripping it of its personality to make it more predictable. Connor, now more determined than ever, refused to let that happen. "We have a responsibility to control it," Vilish argued. "The apex sun is too dangerous." "No, you're responsible for creating it," Connor snapped back. "It doesn't need more conditioning. It needs a chance." Tempers flared, but a new threat soon emerged. One of the mercenary factions, angered by their failure, had activated a long-dormant doomsday device hidden on the moon's surface. A chain reaction would tear the entire celestial body apart, and with it, everything in orbit. Realizing they were out of time, Connor made a desperate plea. "Let Toothy help. It can disable the device. Trust me." With no other options, Vilish agreed. Guided by Connor, the apex sun was released near the activation site. Its ferocity, precision, and unparalleled strength were tested to the limit as it tore through defenses, dismantling machinery and outmaneuvering automated traps. Connor provided crucial assistance, navigating dangerous terrain, diffusing smaller threats, and keeping Toothy focused. As the countdown neared its end, Toothy faced the final barrier, a reactor core too dangerous for anyone but the perfect predator to breach. Connor watched, heart in his throat, as the apex sun fought through waves of lethal energy and intense heat. In a climactic moment, it disabled the device, collapsing from exhaustion. Connor rushed to its side, fearing the worst. "Come on, Toothy. Don't you dare quit on me now." The creature stirred, its fiery eyes dimmed but alive. It let out a soft growl of rumbling reassurance. With the immediate crisis averted, the Giovanni collective faced a choice. Ultimately, they agreed to let Connor oversee Toothy's care and rehabilitation. Under his guidance, the apex sun became a symbol of what could be achieved when empathy triumphed over control. In the months that followed, Connor and Toothy's bond deepened. No longer just a man and a beast, they were partners, guardians of the galaxy's strangest, most unpredictable alliance. For the first time, Connor allowed himself to feel hope. "Looks like you're stuck with me, Toothy," he said, grinning. Toothy growled softly, almost like laughter. Life aboard the Galactic Protectorate's research vessel Athena wasn't easy for Connor or Toothy. While the scientists begrudgingly accepted that the apex sun was more than just a mindless beast, old habits and fears died hard. Toothy remained under constant surveillance, confined to a specially modified habitat filled with physical challenges, reinforced obstacles, and neural stimulation exercises. The goal was twofold: to test its cognitive limits and to ensure it never reverted to its unstable state. Connor, now officially recognized as the apex sun's handler, spent every waking hour with Toothy. He devised training regimens, puzzled through complex mazes, and even worked on socializing the creature with other species aboard the Athena. He faced skepticism and resistance at every turn. "You're wasting your time," sneered Polaris, an avian-like scientist with a razor-sharp beak. "It's a predator. Sooner or later, it will revert to its base instincts." Connor folded his arms, staring down the bird like researcher. "If you think that's true, you haven't been paying attention." But while Connor's confidence in Toothy never wavered, tensions on the vessel escalated. Toothy's very presence made many of the crew uneasy, and rumors spread that rogue factions still sought to capture or kill the creature. The escape from Yorick Prime hadn't erased the bounty on its head. Trouble arrived sooner than expected. In the dead of a quiet station cycle, an infiltration team breached the Athena, disabling its security systems and attempting to seize Toothy. Connor, who had fallen asleep in Toothy's enclosure after a late-night training session, woke to alarms and the sound of energy blasts. The infiltrators hardened operatives armed with stun nets, tranquilizer darts, and advanced weaponry moved with ruthless precision. But they underestimated one thing: Connor's bond with the apex sun. Toothy erupted from its habitat in a fury of claws and scales, roaring with a force that reverberated through the entire vessel. Operatives were tossed aside like rag dolls, their sophisticated weaponry failing to subdue a creature whose fury had been honed through countless trials. Connor, instead of cowering, used the chaos to his advantage, sabotaging the infiltrators' gear, rerouting power to temporary containment fields, and guiding Toothy away from lethal traps. The battle stretched through corridors, leaving scorched walls and broken machinery in its wake. Cornered in the engineering deck, Connor and Toothy faced the lead operative, a heavily armored figure wielding a plasma lance. "Surrender the beast," he demanded, "or watch this ship burn." Connor glanced at Toothy, whose eyes burned with a mix of rage and exhaustion. "You want to hurt it? You'll have to go through me." The operative laughed coldly. "So be it." The fight was brutal. Connor dodged, weaved, and struck with whatever tools he could find, but he was outmatched. Just as the operative prepared to deliver a fatal strike, Toothy intervened, shattering the plasma lance with a single bite. The creature fought with a ferocity born of loyalty, protecting its human companion with every ounce of its strength. Together, they overwhelmed the operative, forcing him to retreat. In the aftermath, Connor collapsed against Toothy's side, breathing hard. "You saved me, big guy." Toothy huffed, a deep, rumbling sound that Connor could almost swear was relief. The attack changed everything. The Athena's crew finally recognized that the bond between Connor and Toothy went beyond mere conditioning. Even Vilish, skeptical as ever, approached Connor with a grudging nod of respect. "You have proven more capable than anticipated. But this alliance is fragile. Others will come." Connor crossed his arms. Then we'll be ready. The Protectorate decided to take proactive measures. They assigned Connor and Toothy as part of a special task force meant to counter rogue threats, protect vulnerable populations, and showcase the strength of unlikely alliances. It was a political move, but also a sign of tentative trust. Connor accepted, seeing it as a chance to change perceptions and give Toothy the freedom it deserved. Their missions were perilous, ranging from dismantling illegal research facilities to thwarting incursions by hostile species. Time and again, Connor and Toothy proved their worth. They became legends among the crew heroes to some, a source of fear to others. Connor's bond with Toothy deepened, and he discovered more about the Apex Sun's intelligence, emotions, and even humor, albeit in a gruff, Toothy sort of way. Not everyone was convinced of Toothy's redemption. A faction within the Protectorate, led by an influential military commander named Olaris, saw the Apex Sun as a ticking time bomb. During a tense council meeting, Olaris demanded that Toothy be neutralized, arguing that its very existence put countless lives at risk. Connor stood in the center of the council chamber, fists clenched. "You're not talking about a weapon, you're talking about my friend." "Your friend is a monster," Olaris spat. "It's only a matter of time before it turns on you. And when it does, blood will be on your hands." Connor's voice was steady. "Toothy had every reason to turn on me and everyone here 100 times over. It didn't. That's not a monster, that's choice." The council was divided, but before a decision could be made, an urgent distress signal interrupted the proceedings. A mining colony on the edge of Protectorate space was under attack. An ancient biological weapon had been unleashed, threatening to consume everything in its path. The council had no choice but to act. "You'll need every asset we have," Connor said, "including us." Reluctantly, they agreed. The mining colony was a nightmare, twisted tendrils of biomass spread across the landscape, consuming metal, stone, and flesh alike. The ancient weapon, known as the Null Form, was relentless and adaptive, much like the Apex Sun. The Protectorate's forces struggled to contain it, their weapons barely slowing its advance. Connor and Toothy arrived in the heart of the chaos. Together they pushed through the biomass, fighting off waves of twisted creatures birthed by the Null Form. Toothy's strength and resilience made it uniquely suited to battle the abomination, while Connor used every trick in his arsenal: explosives, sabotage, and sheer audacity to keep them alive. In the heart of the Null Form, Connor discovered the source, a pulsating core buried deep within layers of organic armor. "It's like a bad horror movie," he muttered, wiping sweat from his brow. "Toothy, you know what to do." Toothy roared in response. With one final, desperate push, they tore through the Null Form's defenses. Connor set charges around the core, praying they had enough time. As the detonation countdown began, he turned to Toothy. "Time to go, buddy." But Toothy hesitated. The Null Form lashed out, trapping Connor. In that moment, Toothy made its choice. It shielded Connor, taking the brunt of the attack and tearing them free. They barely escaped as the charges detonated, obliterating the Null Form and saving the colony. Back aboard the Athena, Connor sat beside Toothy's recovery chamber, exhaustion etched into his features. The Apex Sun was wounded but alive. Across the galaxy, word spread of their victory. The council reconvened, but this time there was no debate. Connor and Toothy had earned their place. Olaris, grudgingly, admitted defeat. "Perhaps I was wrong," he said, eyes cold but respectful. "But do not squander this trust." Connor nodded. "I won't." Over time, Connor and Toothy continued to fight for what they believed in. They became a symbol of hope, of the power of trust, and of the possibility that even the fiercest of predators could change. As Connor walked beside Toothy through the ship's corridors, he glanced up with a grin, ready for the next mission. Toothy growled, a sound that for anyone who knew them was unmistakably a yes.